think that, I'm the insurance preacher, if you don't know. Phillip runs Wolf, where our families train. We're partners and brothers from different mothers. We see, there's so many similarities between firearms and being prepared and training and having a plan, and that's really the basics of any good insurance plan. So, your firearm is your insurance plan when you're in those situations. So lots of recent events going on. Everybody has different opinions. I know which side I land on. I know which side you land on. I think, we should be doing the right thing, common sense, right? Treat other people as you want to be treated. And so the Wisconsin event, tell us what you see, what could have been done better, and, that I can kind of maybe discuss how the litigation
Sure. Thanks for having me. Common sense isn't so common, unfortunately.
Right.
In situations like that, there are a lot of things in the moment that people think they want to do, but when the adrenaline's really running, it's completely different. So in a situation like this, first off, don't be in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people doing wrong things. And a lot of times, unfortunately, you see the little clip of what happened, and it was just a bad decision. And in the moment, there's a lot of things on both sides that the ICE officer shouldn't have been in front of the vehicle.
Right.
That's the first thing that no one really talks about. Right. And then the fact that when something like this really does happen, it was self-defense. The media rushes to it. They show it at the wrong angle to try to push an agenda. Right. But these are just good people out here doing good things, enforcing the law. And what really should have happened, he shouldn't have been in front of the vehicle. Right. And then she made a bad decision. She should have obeyed the law, obeyed the lawful orders given to her. Right. And that would have avoided everything. And she did try to run him over. So that's...
Well, and again, she's there creating chaos or causing trouble in a car, right? I mean, that right there kind of says it all, that, you're trying to push the line. Right? You're trying to create havoc in a situation where that isn't peaceful. That's not protesting peacefully. And so it's definitely sad. But again, if you were the ICE officer and you'd been hit by cars before and been injured and dragged before, 2020, looking backwards, you could always say shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have been there.
That's a great scenario, and we don't want it to turn into a situation. How would you insure something like that?
Well, again, I think that, traditional insurance, everybody's trying to push risk elsewhere, right? And I think that that's at the root of the problem because it breeds more litigation. You pit everybody against each other, again, like a bad divorce, right? They instigate trouble just like the protesters did. Right? It's like, well, he shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have done that. And, so insurance has a lot of fine print and exclusions, which further breeds more litigation and confuses everybody. So, my approach since 1985 has been embrace the risk, right? The helicopter, ski guides, rafting, they're not uninsurable, right? They're not unsafe. Some are. Right? That's called underwriting. So basically, we team up with good people, we have a plan, and we give you more coverage, not less coverage. Because anything your insurance doesn't cover, like assault and battery, or, criminal allegations. In America, you're innocent till proven guilty. And so, contract law, they're taking that away from you, and it's basically they don't want to defend you for criminal acts. Well, having been wrongfully accused of criminal acts, I know that's not fair, right? I was innocent, and my insurance should defend me. So to me, the assault and battery exclusion, any criminal allegation, if I'm a good lawyer, I want to create as much havoc as I can, just like a protester. So I use those weak points to pressure you, right? You have some coverage, but the assault and battery allegation, you got to go hire your own lawyer. So now you're writing your own checks.
Well, I've got a question for you. Let's say I'm a police officer, but I'm off duty. right? Do I have coverage for that? Do I need additional coverage, right? Because a lot of times they have that veil when they're on duty, everything's protected. But what happens to a police officer or security, people in that industry?
Well, I've been saying this term, and it's easier for people to understand. It's like, they're going to throw the bus driver under the bus. So again, legally, the corporation has coverage. The bus driver has coverage as the driver of the bus, but not individually. So a cop, right, on duty has personal exposure.
Right.
Your department, the attorney general, all these people could throw you under the bus and say, look, you didn't do the right thing, right? And so everybody needs personal coverage. And so, again, I embrace and we customize it for every person. And we're not saying we'll insure you at work, but not at home.
That's very important for people out there to know, because they're armed security, or they carry a firearm for a living, or and we need additional coverage.
Right. And again, it's like firearms liability, right? How did we start buying firearms liability, right? Well, it's excluded. There's no coverage there. So, when you go to the simplest, your home, and you have a homeowner's policy, a flood policy, an earthquake policy, that's a great strategy if you're an insurer trying to reduce your risk. But if you're the buyer, I'm not sure that's a good strategy. If you're a lawyer that's going to sue people with 3 policies, that's a great idea. Right? It's like having more coverage. It makes it more profitable for the lawyers. So, again, it seems counterintuitive, and insurance people think I'm stupid, right? Just like removing deductibles from policies, right? If I write a class of business and I see that most of the claims are under 50 grand, I'm a genius if I put a $50,000 deductible in there. But that doesn't align our interests,
Sure.
Right? It actually drives a wedge between us. So, they say, you're going to be paying claims we don't pay. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to have a good relationship with my insured, and I'm going to have better outcomes because I'm not fighting with somebody I should be aligned with.
There's something really valuable, I think I've heard you say once, where if you want to know about your policy, throw it into ChatGPT,
right,
and then it tells you what's different about it. And so that's what the difference with X insurance, that can really help people expose or show the real value.
That's been, again, ChatGPT makes it cool. Parker showed me how to use it, right? Like 5 seconds, boom. We've been telling people for 30 years, show me. I say, I got to look up your skirt, right? That's not being like insulting to anybody, but you actually have to know what you have. And what you want to really get out is what isn't covered. What fine print and stuff you're going to pull out at the time of a claim. And, how do you make happy customers? I think you don't surprise them with bad news when, they're depending on you being there. So,
Sure.
Knowing what you're not covered for, we've been trying to, most people don't want to know, really. And if you point it out and say, you're in Florida and you don't have flood, they say stuff like, well, I'm not in a flood zone. And, wind-driven rain is considered a flood. And there's neighborhoods that never flooded before in this last storm that had 3 feet of water in them for weeks because of new development around them. So, it didn't used to flood because there was, mangroves or low-lying area. Then neighborhoods build up around you where they build up the ground, and then they build up on top of that. And, they don't have a flood exposure. So why wouldn't you just include it?
Scenarios, right? You think about scenarios like home invasions. There's a lot of things that happen where, what's so great is getting some experience, because people don't think it could happen to them, and that's why they don't tend to engage. But there's a lot of scenarios where now, unfortunately, you have people posing as a UPS driver or postal or FedEx, and now they're doing home invasions during the day.
Right.
When you're home with your family there.
Right.
And it's a lot of things where there's a lot of gray area when someone says, well, can I defend myself? And it's like, it depends. Right. Are they inside your home? Are they outside your home? Did they assault you? And now they're leaving your home. And now when they're on their way out, there's no more immediate imminent threat.
Right.
So scenario training really comes into play to help the timing of that, because you can do everything right and still get sued.
Right. Yeah. And, again, I've always said I hate lawyers, and I'm not going to change that comment because it works for me, because I tend to find better lawyers that want to prove, it's like me. People say, oh, you insurance guys are the same. You're just crooks and you want to rip everybody off. And I'm like, excuse me. Right? That motivates me to prove that I'm not the same. That's why I risked my own money and started my own insurance company. So then when you discount me and lump me in with all the other guys, that's insulting. Right?
Well, not only that, but there's a lot of companies out there that, because it's not true, like, tell me the difference between a policy with you and someone that might be prepaid legal or things like that.
Yeah. Again, prepaid legal, there's lawyers out there. They can all take a retainer, right? Do they have the money to defend you? And they don't pay anything that, you would pay if, the guy had $100,000 in medical bills. And, you go to court, he's 90% at fault, you're 10% at fault. We would offer to pay him 10%, right? We'd do that before you go to court. We can sit down and discuss that. So, again, insurance has, kind of trained people not to use it. Well, that's kind of opposite of the guns. I just thought of that. You train with guns so that you can use it. And, the whole insurance market has trained people. If you call your insurance agent in Florida and say, hey, I had a flood, the pipe broke, and they'll say, don't report it because they'll cancel you. And, again, that's a clue that, you don't have good insurance.
A true partner,
Right.
Someone that shares the risk with you, that's on there with you.
And if it goes away, like California homeowners have all been abandoned now, when what can happen does happen, you had fake insurance. It was a bad plan. It was like, being poorly trained with your firearm. You have to think downstream. If I do this, if I settle this frivolous lawsuit, downstream, I'm going to get more, and they're going to expect more money because I've shown them the path. And so, again, my experience is, it's like the bully on the playground. You have to be prepared for the fight, and the more you're prepared for the fight and you are proactive, less likely is you'll get in a fight, thinking ahead of the ball. So, and having an insurance partner with you that sticks with you in the tough times, the good times. Anybody can stick with you in the good times. Anybody can collect your money and issue you a piece of paper. But when the chips are down and you're being sued, or you're in a situation where you could get sued, going proactive with firearms and insurance, it's, again, there's so many similarities to, having the best offense. And no matter what you think about, Trump and politics, obviously, the bad guys in the world, they're scared of Trump, right? And that's how he negotiates better. They weren't scared of Obama or
Biden.
Yeah, if I had a Joe Biden moment there, I couldn't think of his name for some reason.
Spitfire.
Huh?
I'm going to spitfire some questions for you.
Okay.
And I'll answer first. We're going to go Phillip. Then I'll ask you the same question. And these are stats. So I just want to hear your response to say, okay, what's just under 50% of Americans own guns in their home. Where does the false sense of confidence come into the home?
Okay, so when you talk about home protection, everybody wants safety. And you have the population in the United States has over 100 million people own a firearm. And a lot of them own more than one. The false sense of security typically comes because they feel like, you've heard the saying, I own a guitar, therefore I'm a musician.
Right.
Same thing of the firearm is a very, very false sense of security, because a firearm, number one, the training, a lot of people train the wrong way, where they have a firearm and they go to a range, two-dimensional range, they take the gun out, there's no pressure, they're not drawing from a holster, they don't have that immediate adrenaline dump,
Right.
and so they're expected just to rise to the occasion. So when it comes to home invasions, it's a real big thing that it's a false sense of security to have a firearm and expect you're going to use it when the time's right. That's why scenario training comes in is so important. And then, as you know, the legality of the before, during, and after. Do they use excessive force? How are they really going to react when it's game time?
Right.
And that's the beautiful thing about scenario training. It gives them and everyone they care about some experience. So it is a false sense of security just to have something and expect that you're going to rise to the occasion.
Right. Well, and I heard a statistic yesterday that most people that get training or buy a gun or get a concealed carry permit don't touch it again for like 2 years. So, they go and say, I'm going to be prepared, and they take the first step, but that's like 1% of what you should do.
The first 5 years that when we really started to do training, we didn't issue certificates because it's not like, okay, you're safe now. Just because you went through 2 days of training, you're just starting your journey. And it's a lifestyle and it's an experience. And so we wanted a hard focus first on what's more likely to happen, which is nothing.
Right.
And then give you some experience. And that's what's so lucky that when they partner with X Insurance and they have a true partner, the experience that you can come in and look at that and go, no, we need to do this. And you're saving time. You're buying them time. And that's what they really don't understand when real value.
Right.
The paper, if they're paying a premium, and that's something that we ran into, I'm paying for a policy that's probably never going to work if I ever need it.
Right.
So why not invest in something a little better and have the best? And that's what allows you to operate your business and protect what you have.
Right.
Rick, same thing with the home question is I'm a gun owner. I think I'm protected. Someone comes in, I shoot them. Am I protected? Does homeowners insurance cover that?
I mean, under most policies, no. Most policies now have firearms exclusions. And then, again, if they accuse you of a crime, they have another exclusion. So, you want more inclusive coverage. Obviously, as an underwriter of that, we want to know your work, home, and play activities because you can't have, work coverage and no home coverage. And home coverage, if you could get it, it doesn't cover you at work, which is, again, the firearms policies everybody buys are limited to personal. They don't cover you at work. And, they say, well, you have coverage at work. No, that's my work's coverage. And when I'm the security guard or the police officer, it covers me as their employee or their agent. It doesn't cover me personally when things go bad. So again, thinking downstream, and that's everybody, just not a firearm, right? If you're a fireman and you're driving home and there's somebody you rescue, doctors, somebody has a seizure in a restaurant, fine print and exclusions mean that you're not covered. And again, so when we underwrite you, we talk about work, home, and play. And that's, when you train people, they need all three areas of coverage. And again, I don't like saying firearms liability. What if you use a knife, right? So we cover you, Phillip. You have, any means to protect yourself. And, we're not going to argue about, were you working or were you playing or, what was going on.
Good people.
Right.
Just being a part and ensuring good people.
Yeah.
It's so important for people to understand that with scenario training, you can do everything right and you can still get sued. And that's what's so important about partnering with someone like you, because there are cases, and you know this better than anyone, where a jury might find you not guilty. And then all of a sudden the judge, depending on what state, depending on what county, can override that and say, we're not going to find you guilty of this, but we're going to find you guilty of second degree.
Right.
And the judge can override the jury. Right. And people don't know that. It's so important for them to know that, where they feel like, the legal system, you want to do everything you can to avoid that. And so people have these fantastic firearm arsenals and they have all these tools, but they don't know how to use them or the legality of it. So that's the cool part, that if someone's going to buy a firearm, they should invest the same amount, if not more, into training to learn how to never have to use that.
Right. Well, and again, O.J. Simpson shows you that, criminal, you can still be sued civilly after the criminal case is over. So, there's
that's a good one.
two areas of attack that most people don't recognize, that, again, you need personal coverage for alleged criminal acts, right? And again, we want to provide that coverage because I'm a consumer, and I had a situation where I was accused of a crime. I don't want you to tell me that's not covered, because I got off, it was dismissed. And, again, if insurance doesn't cover that, I have to pay for it out of my own pocket. So, and really, we do mock claims, which are kind of like scenario training. Obviously, scenario training at a range is way funner than going through a mock claim. Right? So,
it seems like, and Rick touched on this multiple times, is what's scarier is the criminal coming after you or the legal and attorneys coming after you later on financially. And in the world we live in is like our attackers getting off easier, and then you got to deal with all the lawsuits, and you're just as at risk because of this.
When you think about all the brain damage that comes from legal, being in a gunfight is obviously devastating, right? And or any situation, protecting your kids, but legal challenges are very slow and draining, right?
The fight after the fight.
Yeah, I've had people, they're right and we're fighting and they're winning, and they get to the point where they say, Rick, I'm just tired, right? I just want this to go away. I can't sleep at night, it's affecting my relationship with my family and my wife. And, again, I said, that's part of the game.
That's a real strategy they take, and that's why they need someone like you with the experience.
Wear you out. And, I know a billionaire who he had a competitor steal his software. And I think he spent $40 million to sue him. And, he hated them and thought they were crooks. And so ultimately, the legal challenges get him to the point where he settles for $250 million. A year later, I'm talking to him, and he says, that was the worst thing I ever did, was settle that lawsuit. Right? I only got $250 million, and now they can use, it's like I licensed them to compete against me. And so, again, you have to think, I'm worn out, I'm tired. Well, how worn out and tired are you going to be after you realize that you made the wrong decision and you gave your enemy the license to take advantage of you?
There are professionals out there that take advantage of the system, and without good people, they're caught off guard. And when it comes to home invasions, like a false sense of security, where we look at scenarios and we like to back them up as much as possible so we can learn from them. And so all the experience that you get going through these trials, we try to, how can we show the market why it's so important to have the proper coverage and not do cheap or fake insurance? And how can we show them the right way of, with their valuable time, they go to the range and learn how to use a firearm proficiently, skill at arms, but more importantly, learn how to reverse engineer it. And you need it, but just like it's like a parachute, hopefully you never need it, but if you do, you need it. But when it comes to training, home invasions, there's a big thing that's happening now that criminals are, depending on the state they live in, they know if you're unarmed, and predators know there's safety in numbers, and they'll go after, just like in nature, they're pack animals. And so there are a lot of things now that it's so important that people have the right training, but also have the right insurance.
Right. The right tools and support, and it's, it's a jungle out there. But, the legal system is the best in the world. I get people who want me to go to other countries, Australia and New Zealand, and Lloyd's does business worldwide, and they try and make that like it's an advantage, and everybody wants to sell the insurance. U.S. is the insurance nightmare because of our legal system, and I think of it just the opposite. Last place I want to go is some foreign country where, the
no
legal
Constitution,
system
no
is
Bill of
different.
Rights.
Right. And so, the system we live in creates guardrails for us to, have a civil environment to live in and fairness. But just like when I got wrongfully arrested, it's expensive, right? And most people can't afford it. That's why they buy insurance. So again, I'm going to spend more money than anybody else on every good case, because I'm invested in the industry and I know downstream it makes life better. And again, it's like the bully on the playground. If you let the bully take your lunch money every day, your mom can give you more lunch money. It's not going to solve the problem.
Right.
You have to be willing to do what's right. And that's really what it comes down to when, these guys say, oh, I'm tired, I'm like, and I tell them, I'm like, you need to grow some balls, dude. This is what it's about, right?
Have a conversation that matters.
If we were wrong, we should have already paid. But, when we're right and we're negotiating with terrorists, you don't get tired. That's not an option. And unfortunately, I deal with that a lot where people want to settle claims that my experience says don't. And I don't argue with them, right? If you really want to get out, you're done. I can pay the claim and I'll keep insuring you. But if we paid $5 million we didn't have to pay, there's no magic fairy that brings that money down.
Sure.
And that's why insurance goes away, is because people aren't living in reality. And, I think I always say I'm squished in the middle of a bullshit sandwich. You got the people who sue and benefit, lawyers, from, the policies and the sloppiness. Again, if I give you proper homeowners insurance and I pay you, you never need a lawyer. Right? We all the legal
Bench
bills,
lawyers.
all the legal bills we're wasting money on go away if you do the right thing. So, again, it's foundational. You build a house on a good foundation. You don't say, oh, I don't really need a good foundation. Let's put that money in the house. It'll be beautiful. Well, you're wasting your money. Buying a gun that's going to fail every time. Nobody would do that, right? Nobody would buy a car that fails every time you go out and get into it. So the insurance system, has proven that it fails when used. Right?
There's so much out there that it can be overwhelming for some people to watch the news, and a lot of things are happening in this day and age, and we want safety for everybody. So that's something that, geez, the last time I think I was on it was a couple of years ago, and since then we've come out with a new flashlight, and we have some new things, and we want to bring value.
Let me see, here we are.
Boom.
We want to bring value.
Cody was going to attack me. I just interrupted his attack mode.
I'm down on the floor.
We want to bring value to everyone, and so that's something that is going to be the best in the industry. All flashlights are really made for military or law enforcement purposes, because a company is not interested in making a flashlight unless you order 30,000 of them.
Right.
And then when you start saying, okay, well, we want less, they say, well, we'll make it for you less, but we want to keep it this way because then we can still sell it to law enforcement. Nothing is really designed for civilian purposes. So it's neat that we have a learning experience built around learning how to think and react faster under stress. And it's something that we really want to bring a lot of value in our school teacher appropriation, that we really feel like we can bring value to schools, that everybody wants safety. And how do you get everyone on board is bringing some personal value. So that's with you and X Insurance, you're assisting us, and we feel very blessed.
My first experience with Phillip, we land at his facility, and I got Jeff, my buddy, and we fished together down the Keys. He's a captain, and Dale, who's former law enforcement, and we get there, and I don't know what to expect, right? But it's almost looking in the mirror, right? People say, "Who's this crazy insurance dude?" Right? Because I don't talk to many people about anything, but when you start asking me insurance questions, my second personality comes out that I've named the insurance preacher. This is the firearms preacher.
There you go. Safety, family safety.
And so again, we're all sitting there thinking, well, this guy's a little,
enthusiastic,
he's passionate, right?
Enthusiastic.
And, again, to me, it's genius because, you don't want to force people to, like firearms, not like firearms, like insurance, not like it's a personal choice. But, when you get people in the mindset of protecting themselves, which is, different than protecting your kids. When you have kids, then it becomes like,
right.
This is my responsibility.
Right.
And, being able to think strategically with a flashlight, or if you don't have your flashlight, what am I going to do? Run in the room and grab a fire extinguisher, and you start thinking in a way that puts you ahead of the ball and gives you an advantage if you had never thought of it. So,
Sure.
When we saw it, I mean, Jeff was impressed, Dale was impressed. We tell everybody about it. And, once you've kind of become more aware of, I may have to protect myself and my kids, I think it's more comfortable to decide, how you want to do that. And I think when people think about it and scenario train, they're going to be more open to a firearm than thinking the stupid stuff they think about it.
Sure.
But you can't force them to like firearms, but a flashlight, having a plan and a strategy. And so, that's why we have become partners and brothers from different mothers, is because, it's amazing how many similarities there are.
We have a custom
break it
learning
down.
experience, and the same way you get to know you just want good people. And that's something that gravitated us, that we just want good people. And what you'll find most of the time is that if you do the right things and you're in the right places, things don't happen. Bad things don't happen to you.
Or you can, like the Lone Ranger used to say, head them off at the pass, tonto.
Right.
Right.
Should firearms be required insurance just like cars?
Well, again, I think that, why would you legislate something that we can do because it's the right thing to do? As you write homeowners, as you write people insurance, you should include it because that's what they might need, right? So I don't like legislation. I don't like more government. I think that we have the power, and that's, most buyers, they say, all you guys are the same, you're all crooks. And I'm like, well, that was true in the past, but you don't have that excuse anymore, because I'm here to do it the right way, but you as a buyer have to make the right decision, which, we got about 10,000 insureds nationwide now that make that decision. They make it annually, right? Insurance is an annual policy, and the good ones we'll stick with through thick and thin. The people who lie, cheat, and steal, bad people, I can't. My model doesn't work with them.
Sure. We always talk about, we want to educate you so you can make educated decisions.
Right.
And then a mutual friend of ours, Diana Muller, always talks about education, not legislation.
Right.
Where we don't need another policy. We just need people to follow the rules, follow the law, be a good person.
Right. I mean, if the laws on the books are there, if they're not enforced or used, they're worthless. And rather than create a new law, we ought to
Enforce what's already
amend
there.
that and enforce the stuff that's there.
That answers it then. So no, right now, not a requirement.
Well, I don't support any legislation to just keep adding more layers on it. I mean, that's the trend in states that don't like guns, right? And that will be an obstacle because of the cost and the affordability of everything. So, again, there's too many insurance products. You're buying crappy homeowners insurance, but they're selling you $1 million worth of life insurance. And, to me, it's more important that you start from the ground up and protect everything. Do you need $1 million worth of life insurance? If they're selling you $1 million, I think you probably could use less than that. Salesmen tend to oversell, and they sell you the product, the cans of corn that, they're offered. They're not willing to customize it for you. And to me, that's the key, is you shouldn't buy cookie cutter policies. They're outdated.
Rick, something that came into mind, I'm not sure if you've been asked this before, but what's the real difference? Why can't some carriers that sell firearms insurance, for example, and some call it certain insurance, some can't? What makes it different for you that you can operate in states that they can't?
Well, again, they've when you market it as firearms liability, again, you get into the legislation of that's you're required, right? Again, they're buying a master policy, right? And you're being added to their master policy. You're
Okay.
not getting your own policy.
Right. That's a big differentiation. Differentiation. Blah 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 blah.
And you know the prepaid legal it gets you under the radar, right? Car warranties are kind of the same, right? It's a promise for me to do something in the future. Oh, that's kind of like insurance. So there's some states that say if you offer car warranties or home warranties, you have to have an insurance company behind you,
Okay.
right? And so that's
Where you come in.
there's and I've done some of that, but again, in the states that don't require it, they just do it directly. But where they do it directly, they're not an insurance company. They don't have the funds. They don't pay the indemnity. So any settlement or any judgment you pay.
That's a very important
Yeah, so
part that you do,
You're
but
getting half. Real insurance defends you and indemnifies you.
that's huge. That's a message out there that you guys can be talking about, because that's what makes you unique and different and custom.
And again, I insure Phillip. You can't tell me I can't insure Phillip with a firearm. Right? I can add an exclusion for a firearm, but again, the trend is they're going to make you have it. So it's like we don't exclude it, so it's included, right? So we're more free,
Yeah.
because we're not focusing on a firearm. We're focusing on you and the fact that you may use a firearm, you may use a knife. We don't care what you use. You're defending yourself,
Right.
And that's going to be civil or criminal, and they're going to come after you for money. And so you need a defense and you need indemnity. And so all of these other programs, I mean, I can't even believe that they have the amount of membership they have. I was talking with one of the prepaid legal guys, and like you said, they do have an insurance company that I'm familiar with behind them in the states that they're required to have insurance behind them. But the master policy is to the entity, right? Not the people that join their prepaid legal program. So, what's that policy? And in most cases, it excludes work. In their case, it doesn't cover indemnity. So, it's really narrowed down to the point where if you use it, probably not going to perform. And if you use it, they're probably going to cancel you. And that's been my experience from what, I've heard everything. When I started following it, went hunting with Kyle Rittenauer, and, sad to hear about his nightmare. I mean, I was amazed because I thought he would settle out, right? At some point, they would give him an exit door. He said, I never had an option. They were going to crucify me. So that's the difference when you're in a political fight over firearms. He was a pawn, and I don't know all the details, but the most interesting thing was that when he became famous from that, the haters came after him, and the guys on the other side, the gun industry or whoever it is, came to his rescue. But the minute the press was over, everybody abandoned him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of sad. And great young kid. The fact that he stood tall and stuck to his guns, was a surprise to me, because I know they normally give you, like me, I was charged with a felony. I could have accepted a misdemeanor, and they would have dropped everything. So I think, I don't get intimidated like that. But as I said earlier, when people say to me, Rick, I'm tired, that's what I thought they would have done to Kyle, is worn him out. He'd plead guilty to something, and everybody would go on their way. But that was a full-on brawl where he never had an exit door. And so I was, pleased to meet him. Think he's a great young kid, and I think he's working for a gun rights organization in Texas. Last I heard.
Yeah, there was that scenario again for him. He's very lucky, and good people are in the bad place at the wrong time. Right. And it's it left the door open that's why they came after him, because being there, but he was there to help. But that's the other part where if you're not insured,
I mean, he showed a lot of restraint after I saw the videos, not the, the ones that the prosecutor used, but the real ones showed the whole story. In Landman, which I know everybody loves the show Landman, they just had a scenario like that. I can't remember it now. I thought about it like
Season
30
3?
seconds ago, huh?
Was it season 3, the latest one?
Yeah, it was just this latest.
I'm not caught up.
Yeah. Anyway.
I've got a question for you, and respond in a situation or a story. Phillip, what's the most misleading idea that the public have about the space that you do? And if you can't answer with a specific situation or something that you've seen going on.
The most misleading situation when people think about scenario training is they think that you can design 5 scenarios and everyone will just fall inside those 5. And they feel like, 5 examples and we want you to go through these and this is proper training. Well, what if you're older? What if you're a child? What if you're a male? What if you're a female? What are your physicality? What is your past experience? And so those scenarios don't apply to everybody. And it's like I can talk to a group, but I can only train a person. And so the misconception is that you can get what we're doing someplace else as just a rubber stamp. And you can't. It's custom. Same way that your policy works for people is you're insuring good people. So that is a big misconception in the industry that not only is watching something you think, oh, I'd do this. How do you know how you're really going to react until you get put in that situation? Right. And then how do you know how you're really going to react when you get put in that situation if you can cheat? And what I mean is that a lot of times with training, similar to practice in a basketball game, you might be in a basketball arena and you're practicing basketball and you're shooting free throws and you're just sitting there and there's no one around and it's nice and quiet and you're not tired and you're sitting there and that's how you practice.
Right.
Well, how can you then recreate it's your district game and you're down by 1 and you just got fouled and you have to get these 2 free throws in, and if you miss them both, you lose. You miss one, you might lose.
Right.
And then how do you prepare yourself mentally for that? So that's the difference in the misconception with scenario training is if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And what we do is we eliminate all the ability for you to try to game it. So you simply have to react. And that's the magic of something that we discovered many, many years ago. And we spare no expense to create that, because with your valuable time, we don't want to give you a training scar or a false sense of security. And people come and they'll say, I want to learn how to be safer in my house. And I'm like, why don't we just teach you how to be safer in general? So whether you're in your house or whether you're walking to your car or whether you're coming out of the grocery store, you can apply the same safety concepts. Right. So that's the difference, is that when I see videos online and someone says, what do you think about this? I like to go back as far as I possibly can and say, how could that have been avoided altogether by just doing this instead of doing that? And then the ego kicks in. Right. And so, one of our good friends, Andre, where it's like he's the most dangerous person in the world with his hands. And it was something that we just start to plant the seed and role play things that might happen, but just teaching you how to think and react faster under stress, and then adding the legality of the before, during, and after, because you can be 95% right, but still 5% wrong. And once they grab on that 5%, then they just try to expand it as much as possible so you'll settle.
Right.
But when you're a good person, if you have no experience, that's what it takes to have a real partner with experience to help guide you.
Right.
Rick, same thing with claims. What's the most misleading thing that the public thinks?
Well, I mean, it's all the fake news, like this is a legal hellhole. The courts aren't fair. You can't trust juries in this jurisdiction. And, it's all fake news, and it benefits the lawyers and them being able to intimidate you. So, I remembered the Landman thing. So this girl with the baby and her husband got killed, and the kid of Tommy is her boyfriend. And she's working at this bar, and she goes out back to smoke, and this guy starts attacking her, raping her, and he's on top of her. He hit her a couple times. He happens to walk out and see his girlfriend getting raped, and he goes and gets the guy, puts him in a chokehold, and beats the fucking living shit out of him, and the guy dies. So the cops are all over him, and the badass lawyer chick that works for the oil company, she comes in and they're showing the video, and he hit the guy 17 times, right? Which at some point the guy was disabled. He wasn't a threat anymore. And so, you know, they're charging him, and he's fucking shitting his pants, and Tommy's freaking out. And the badass lawyer goes in, and they show the video, and she knows that the one officer killed some guy that was attacking him and shot him 11 times, right? All right in the chest. So the first shot did it, you know, but he took 9 more. And that's what he was kind of bearing over this kid, saying, it's like, you punched him way more times than you should, you know. She walks in and she says, back that tape up. Right? So they were focused on him coming in and seeing it. Well, then you show him beating up the girl, and you say, you know, if that was your daughter or your wife, what would you have done? Right? And the cop said, I'd have just shot him. Right? So he'd have just taken care of it neat instead of like overkilling him. Well, you lied, because that's what you did when you were in that position. But, you know, again, who's going to come and fight for you? And who's going to look at the whole picture, which, you know, if somebody's focusing in on one thing, like bad venue, or, you know, they just had a huge $22 million judgment in this county, right? Those are all the things that are fake. You know, plaintiffs' lawyers know if they ask for more money, that raises everything up, right? So you have to drive the boat. You have to fly the plane. You can't hand it off and say, oh, my insurance company's taking care of that. Because, yeah, they're going to take care of it, but they don't know the facts. They weren't there. So my best insurers are people who are passionate, right? And small claim, right? The smallest claims where I can't even go represent them. They have to go to small claims court. We send a lawyer to sit and help them. But they got pictures, you know, they got witness statements. They're like, shit, you're your best own lawyer, dude. You know more about this than anybody. And it's refreshing and amazing when you have passionate people who will do the right thing. You know, insurance, the legal system, everything, bully on the playground, everybody's scared, you know, your policy's a turd. That doesn't give you more confidence, that gives you less confidence. So the whole thing is about intimidation. And, you know, have a plan, train, you know, and pick good people, and you can use a system that everybody wants to sell as a bad system. We need tort reform. No, we don't. Just do the right thing and fight the right way and pick the right partner, and we win all the time.
I think that's the biggest takeaway, is pick the right partner, and then education. I think everything in this country that we're having an issue with right now just comes down to education. People aren't educated. They listen to sound bites, and then they need to really dig down and know what they have so that they can make an educated decision.
Right. Well, and, you know, I guess I'm a little bit of, you know, I think that there's people in this country that I don't know that you could educate them. They just don't like America, right? They want us to be, I don't know, like Europe or, you know, Cuba. I don't know.
Well,
but I know we're not here because people wanted that, right? America was formed because they were being mistreated. They didn't have the freedoms. People fought and died. And now you have shit going on in, you know, these bigger cities where Americans aren't important. You know, it's illegal people here that we're putting a priority over our wounded soldiers. And, you know, to me, it's disrespectful and very disappointing. And again, I do think education can go a long way. But, I mean, from what I see, some of these people...
Sure.
You couldn't educate them. They're never going to agree with us.
Oh, I see something where something does really well, and there's still 20% that believe this, and you're going, how could they 20%? But
certainly they'll see it now. And I did think that during, you know, the presidential election, Chicago and some of these areas that, you know, have previously voted for Democrats saw that the politicians were saying, we don't have money for you, but, you know, we're giving all these people money. And every day we find out there was more money going to non-Americans while they're telling Americans we don't have enough money.
I want more people to get engaged, and my wish for everyone is I want safety for everyone. And when they get engaged with their own safety, they just get a little more educated and they start having opinions. And they have opinion based on their own experience, because a lot of times they have an opinion on something they know nothing about. So that is the difference, where everybody wants safety, and that's kind of my message of what I want everyone to take away, that the world can be very scary, the world can be a dangerous place, but having the right people and the right partners, that's one of those things where everybody wants safety. So that's a really cool, just educate and then bring value to them personally. That's how you get them more engaged and empowered and inspired to want to learn more.
Awesome.
Flashlight, good learning tool.
Good learning
Genius here that came up with it. In a plan that's inclusive, right? We can't force them to have coverage if they're instructor that comes on your property, but we can cover them working for you.
Yes.
Again, I would suggest that they have their own personal policy that covers them at work, home, and play. As an instructor, as a firearms guy, they may be a girls' soccer coach, right? Those are all things that, as the lawyers attack, they try and separate the herd and get us to fight with each other. And, when you tell a driver you're not covered, we're firing you, that driver becomes the enemy in an auto accident.
Sure.
So, again, you got to think downstream and have an inclusive strategy. You can't change the facts. If some instructor screwed up, there's all kinds of examples of, that we didn't screw up. He screwed up, and you bifurcate it and you deal with it in a very, logical plan. But when you start throwing each other under the bus and people don't have coverage, then it gets really like everybody's pointing at each other, which is the perfect divorce for lawyers.
That's a lot of wisdom there, and there are a lot of podcasts and things that are out there, but I really hope that everyone not only watches this one, but continues to watch the other podcasts that you do, because you have straight talk and you're a real person, and that's what gravitates people to you and your company. So we're just trying to help as many people as possible, and you're appreciated.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, I'm blessed to meet and know a lot of really good people, some of them for 43 years now. And you probably, 6, 7, maybe 8 years
hot minute.
now. So anyway, one of the best guys I know, and we do everything to support him, and he does everything he can to support us. So thanks for being bored by the insurance preacher. I know you all hate insurance, so I do. Let's change that by doing it right.
Absolutely. Amen.
Right on.
Yep.